Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Joseph Clough, and this is episode 815. Now, in this episode, we're talking about how you can rewire the anxious brain. Okay, so how do we do that? Because it is literally a strategy, right? Your brain has been accustomed to associate to certain things or triggers to experience anxiety. Your internal connection and association to the outside world creates that response. So we all know what anxiety is, but if we just go a bit deeper on the brain side of things, and I've got an experiment for you all very, very soon, and this is being broadcasted live on youtube.com/Joseph Clough, so I may be asking you a question as well as to what you felt on this experience of what actually happened. But before we go ahead and do that exercise, which will require not driving, it's not hypnosis, let's just think about the biology of the brain. If you do anything over and over and over again, you will unconsciously start to expect it. And I've actually got a real prime example. The other day, there was a spider in my place, and it was quite high up near the ceiling on the wall. And obviously I got it out and things like that. But I've caught myself, every room I go into, my eyes dart up to those areas looking for more. And I'm not doing that consciously, right? My brain, just by saying so small, has caused me to be on high alert unconsciously for looking out for more of the same. That's what anxiety is, right? Your anxiety is focusing on what you don't want to happen. And one event, even so small like my silly event, has trained my brain for a short period of time, because it will go, to look for certain areas wherever I am, because that one event. Now, of course, if we've had big, significant emotional events, it is far more easier to understand as to why and how our brain seeks out those possibilities of what could be there or what might happen. What if we get found out? The fear of rejection, the fear of failure, the fear of success, and fill in the blank. And if we go deeper onto the biology, I like to see the brain as like a forest or an interconnected web of things, right? Like the information is darting around. Now, if you can imagine them now as highways, the more you go down that one highway or motorway, it's easier for the brain to just go, oh, this is the route to go down. This is the route to go down. This is the route we've been going down for X amount of times, even years. So this is just the route of getting to where we are, to where we want to be. And that would be, in this case, I see this, I feel anxiety, and it takes us down that strategy and that pattern and that habit to reproduce the same results as usual. Whether it be good or bad, your unconscious mind is not always about the present experience, but more the intent as to why it's trying to do what it's trying to do, right? It's trying to keep us safe. And you can then take it out into like an overgrown garden. If you go down one route of that overgrown garden for a long period amount of time, after a while, it will be well trodden down. And it's easy to go down that pathway rather trying to go down a new one, because that's all overgrown. So that's just how the brain works. We can go down the neural networks, we can go to the synapses, we can go to the neuroplasticity of the brain, all of those things. And it causes us to reproduce the same result regardless of the outcome. It's about the intention. So now we know about the biology, how it gets trained up for certain responses unconsciously, not consciously. How do we then begin to retrain the brain to think differently? You see, wherever your mind goes, your body goes. I really know that to be true. The mind and body connection. Have an anxious thought, your body will feel anxiety. Watch that anxious thriller movie or horror movie. Your body, although knows it's not real, you are engaged and immersed into the experience. Our body is always reacting, and we have to be able to regain and retrain it rewire it, because it happens. You will rewire your brain if you start to apply what I say today. And this could be for anxiety, this could be for fear, this could even be for phobias, it could be for all of these things. It works. It can take a bit of time, and as always, I don't want to keep going on about it. It's really important to resolve the root cause of any issues. So big limiting beliefs which may create the anxiety, but I still want to be able to give you this idea that you can start to practice and apply in your life. So with that, I did say there's going to be a bit of an exercise. So if you can stand up, I would love you to stand up. If you're sitting down, it still works, but I know not everyone, like depending how their physiology is, that could be a bit painful. So if you have trouble standing up and things like that, we can do it all sitting down. But if you can stand up, stand up. But whatever happens, have your feet firmly planted on the floor. So you're not moving them really. They're just pointing straight ahead of you, roughly. And what I want you to do is this. I want you to go ahead and put your hands out in front of you, right? As if both hands are directly in front of you. And you can allow the hands to touch if you would like, but go ahead and just put them out in front of you physically so you can see them with your eyes open. And what I'd like you to go ahead and do, and I'm going to move my mic out of the way a little bit for those on the audio, you may notice a bit of a sound difference, but with my hands out in front, I'm going to move around, and I'm going to just stop talking for a second, to a place in which I can move to without physically straining the body. So just to repeat it on the audio, because this is primarily a podcast despite going on YouTube, I'm putting my hands out in front of me and then I'm pivoting, I'm twisting around without putting strain. I can move my hips but keeping my legs firmly where they are really, or my feet, and just move around to a point where you think you can move to. There's something that I do when I do my public speaking or seminars or trainings and things like that. It's a good example of what the mind does. But just have that visual marker of how far you can go and then gently allow your hands to go back up in front of you. Okay? So now, there's why it's important not to be driving. I mean, you wouldn't be doing that when you're driving anyway. But this time, I want you to close your eyes. It's not hypnosis, but just close your eyes, if you can do. And just imagine, I'll repeat that, just imagine those hands floating up in front of you. Don't move them physically, but just imagine that they're there. Even if you're not a great visualizer, it doesn't matter. It still works every time. But just imagine as if they're floating in front of you with your eyes closed, and then imagine those hands going in the exact same direction, the same pathway, to the exact same point that you reached when you did it physically, but you're just imagining it. And then imagine those hands coming all the way back in front of you and then down upon your lap, just in your imagination. And this time we're going to do it again. Imagine those hands floating up above in front of you, going all the way round, same pathway, same direction, but this time you're going maybe a foot further in your mind. You're just imagining going beyond your limit of where you had that little marker in your mind as how you did it physically. And then imagine having gone past that marker as if they're going all the way back round again, right out in front of you, and imagine them going down to your lap. Then go ahead and imagine it again. Imagine those hands out in front of you and then going all the way around past that first one when you did it physically, then past a foot, and this time you're going so far around, all the way, like another 2 or 3 foot round. And then imagine those hands going all the way back round, right up in front of you, and then down to your lap. Let's do it again. Imagine those hands going up, going all the way round, past the marker, past the 2 feet, all the way round so they come right back in front of you. We've done a total loop right there. We've gone all the way around, and just imagine if that were possible. And then imagine those hands going all the way back round, comfortably and gently in your mind. And then, as if you imagine those hands coming back down to where they were. Now go ahead and open your eyes for me. Now with your eyes open, go ahead and put your hands out in front of you again, just like you did physically. And I want you to go ahead and then move round, all the way around, and notice how much further you can go right now. Just notice that. Now, for everyone who imagined that in their mind first, I know without a doubt you went far further. Some will be incredibly surprised how much further you went, simply by going there in the mind first. So for those on YouTube, feel free to let me know what you experience in how far, and we may bring it out onto the screen. But just notice how much further you went when you first, compared to when you first did it, and then imagined it, and then went all the way around in your mind, and then did it physically. Now that to me is very interesting, because I know that most, if not all of you, would have gone maybe a foot more, half a foot, but up to maybe 2 feet more. So why did that happen? Well, we usually go ahead. So someone said my arms went a full foot further. So that's amazing. If we just go ahead and just notice, why is that important and what does that actually mean for us? Well, you originally went to the place you thought was possible, what you expected to be possible. Then you went there in your mind and you hallucinated going beyond your limits, because we understood what that limit was in the beginning. Someone else just said, no way, went right to the middle of my back on both sides and I can barely twist. And someone said, I'm going to leave the names out. Someone said, wow, I went another foot and a half at least. And someone else said, that was really far. I hope I don't need a chiropractor soon. And that's why we got to do it physically, right? Because we just kind of now know. And someone else said, incredibly, how far I went after the imagination. Exactly. So we went there in the mind. The body then produced what was really possible. So imagine that. Imagine if you can do that, what you could do when it comes to anxiety. You see, at the moment, we are unconsciously planting negative thoughts and feelings to reproduce the same narrative and story in feeling anxious, worried, and fearful, and so on. That's all it is our imagination gone wild. The imagination has taken control, which is the unconscious mind. And people are saying they went over a foot further and so on, which is amazing. And I'm sure everyone listening on the podcast noticed that too. Just even a little bit, but a lot of people will be like a foot or more. So if you go ahead and then apply this same principle in beginning to imagine in your mind's eye how you would like to be every day, every morning you wake up, do you think there's a chance, there's a likelihood that after a period of practice, not just once, but maybe as we visualize more than once, we visualize more than once in the day, over a period of days, do you think your unconscious mind would start to know what is possible, of what could be done? Is there's another way of being? You see, if I think of what hypnosis does, which a lot of you know me for, and that is, I reprogram the unconscious mind to be safer and to think differently by painting and using learnings to have a positive outcome. Yeah, we've got to know where we are to where we want to be. But on the whole, it's getting your unconscious mind to have a different narrative, a different story, a different plan, a different recipe that will produce outcome after outcome. Of course, the more designed it is for your unconscious, the better the results will be, and also working on that root cause, which may create the limitation and the anxiety, the anxious brain. If we really want to rewire it, you have to practice. You've got to practice and practice. Now, something that I've always thought about, like, or maybe I can just imagine going to the gym. If I just go there and maybe my body will reproduce that physique. Well, in a way that I'm joking, in another way, there are studies that are observing certain actions actually increases the muscle mass of a body. They've done it plenty of times, from doing these little, if you can imagine a piano in your mind going da 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 da. And they wanted to physically measure, if you did that every day for like 5-10 minutes, how strong the finger muscles would grow. They got people just imagine doing it. And guess what? Not to the same degree as doing it physically, but there was muscle growth in the imagination of doing it. And even wildly more strange, those who were observers, in other words, the test people, they were observing the people do it, observing those imagining it, and they also increased in certain, not much, but muscle mass by just thinking and observing. So there is a power to the brain that we want to be able to utilize. So how would I do this? Well, number one, like letting go of fears or phobias, we're usually, or anxiety in general, we're locked into the experience. We're looking through our own eyes because that's how it is. So in other words, we're highly associated into the experience. We have that high association of feelings, of anxiety, of fear, of thoughts. Well, one of the first steps is to disconnect, right? And how do we disconnect? Well, we dissociate. So if I were you, I would imagine myself over there going throughout my day. That would be the first thing I would do, because I'm no longer feeling those feelings because I'm not locked into them in that associated way. So if I dissociate and observe myself, I am free of negative feelings. And then if I am imagining and hallucinating my future as to how I would like to be, and seeing my physiology, and you don't have to be a great visualizer. I personally am more kinesthetic. I go by feelings rather than visual. That's why you may notice I don't all do the hypnotic inductions or going down garden paths and all those kind of things. Don't need to, in other words. I go ahead and still do this, and it works. So if I were you, I would imagine to the best of your ability of how you would like to be observing you going throughout your day, and do that over and over again. Every single morning, every single day, you are projecting, you are pre-teaching to your unconscious mind of how you would like to be different without the negative emotions. And that just means your unconscious mind is learning a new strategy. Now go back to what I said in the analogy, the superhighway of the brain, the overgrown garden. What are we doing here? We're setting up new pathways. We're changing and rewiring the neurology of you, the neuroplasticity, the neural networks, the synaptic gaps. All of those things, we're passing off new information by going down a different pathway. We're interrupting the old anxious brain to one of how we'd like to be. That is what I would say if I were to give you some advice in rewiring how the brain works. As simple as that. Now, of course, I did say it is so important to let go of the root cause and not just work on the symptoms. Some people, anxiety is the big issue, but for a lot of people, it's how they identify with themselves, which creates anxiety. I always like the analogy I say, which I would because I say it. If you went to a doctor one day and the doctor says, "How are you feeling?" And you list out, "I've got a headache, sore throat, stomachache, aches, pains, fever, shiver," all of those things. Now, if that doctor turned to you and said, "Well, there's our plan of action. I'm going to give you one pill for each and every one of your symptoms," before you know it, you are having to walk away from the doctor's office with 10, 15 pills just for each one of your ailments. It's not going to be a good doctor. I would highly suggest going and looking for other opinions in this case. But let's say you go to a new doctor and you say, "Look, I've got all these symptoms," and you list out the 10 of them. In this case, the doctor goes, "Well, based on what you've told me, I believe this is the root cause, and it could be like a bacterial infection, and therefore, I'm going to give you some antibiotics." That will not only let go of the bacterial infection, but it will clear up all the other ailments because those were symptoms of something bigger. And that is why, like for example, my program is designed to work with the deepest unconscious root cause of the problem. The thing that we are unaware of, the deep unconscious hidden root cause, that once we isolate, once we discover, we can then work with it in a way that will give you the profound results. It is absolutely amazing of what is possible. You can make a lifetime transformation from your future. You can undo the many decades of the issue, because sometimes we have it ever since we're very, very young. All of those things, you can let it all go within weeks. Within 8 weeks for sure. You can do all of that. Now, if you personally want to be able to apply for my program, there is an investment. It's fully customized and tailored to your needs. You gotta be a professional. You gotta go, look, I'm ready to go all in on myself. I've been putting myself on the sidelines way too long. All of those things. And you're like, I'm done with this. I'm gonna put myself first by hiring someone who will support you and show you how to get it. You can go to josephclough.info/talk. When you go there, you'll see a calendar. You'll book a time, fill out an application form to prepare us for the one-to-one call. And then when you attend that one-to-one Zoom call, we'll get clear on exactly what you're going through, what you want to let go of, exactly what you would like to achieve. Figure out what is the core issue if we can touch upon it. And then if we can solve it, we will maybe invite you to the program. Once again, you got to be invested in time and in money, but it will return you a lifetime of freedom. And that cost of remaining the same should not then mean there's an investment anymore, because it isn't an investment, but like you go, how could I possibly not do this if I am free from all my biggest core issue to be able to live the life that I want in abundance, in career, in health, in relationships, all of those things for the rest of your life? Then I know for a fact you might be ready for us. And we'll say if we can solve it or not. And it's once again, josephclough.info/talk. Now, with that, I hope you got value from this episode, this little demonstration. There's far more we could do as well to convince you of how your unconscious mind is reactive to your imposed limitations, which then becomes the unconscious mind's imposed limitations, but you can resolve and let it all go. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to speaking to you on a future one. Many thanks and goodbye.